Welcome everybody. We are here for the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC, sponsored by Elgato. World Cup. So get ready. We're here for the pre-show, everybody. We're going to be building up the hype for the final tomorrow between Italy and Spain, two European heavyweights, going and squaring off toe-to-toe against each other to try to go ahead and find out who will be crowned the champion of the World Cup.
And a hype match, I'm really sure this is going to be, because these two teams, probably some of the more favourite teams coming into the tournament, have so many good players. It's not even funny. They've got such a depth of talent. They've got such a great community between everyone, and they've done so well, both teams, to have made it this far, to get to the finals. And we've had such an exciting journey all the way through, from showcasing all of the teams, the however many teams that we had in 50-something, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, to now being down to the final two teams that are going to be battling it out to end this tournament and to once and for all decide, at least in the 2021 series, which country is the best at VGC.
Exactly. So if Ben's words weren't light enough there, this is essentially going to be the last weekend for the Bombardiers. You will not be able to pass them over, at least up until the next World Cup is going to be alive. So what we're going to do, of course, we're going to be covering all of that stats, like we were just mentioning, for example, you may find of interest, and in general, there's going to be a lot of stat nerds out there. So this is the show you want to be in, and it's just so good to be able to get the over summarization of this great tournament, as we do have a lot in store, a lot of information, a lot of data. We're going to try to go ahead and see how the meta, of course, within this World Cup has actually been structured throughout all of the weeks that we've been going through. So we're going to go ahead and get a slide up right now, just so we can have a general synopsis of what the situation has been in general. 10 weeks of play, so a lot of weeks, like we mentioned, 55 teams from all over the world. No, that's not any sort of evil demonic thing there. 666 players and managers apparently is a fact there, so a bit worrying. But then again, a lot of work, a lot of players and managers to be able to just bring such a great event and such a great experience to everybody right now for the past 10 weeks. It has been absolutely amazing. And as you can see, a lot of individual matches as well. 1,041 and 12,492 Pokemon used among all matches. So if you weren't aware of this event for the past 10 weeks, where have you been? There's been a lot going on.
Yeah, the last 10 weeks have been pretty crazy, and so many players and managers. I didn't realize it had been quite that many, but I'm sure when you do the maths, it all works itself up. And you know, going back to 1,041 individual matches, you just think about how many different Pokemon choices, different ways that teams are trained, different restricted Pokemons that were used. And different ways that people decided to utilize all of those Pokemon, all of those team choices, in what came down to just a head-to-head between two players of any particular team facing off against another and seeing which one would be coming out on top.
Well, yeah, exactly that. And of course, we've just reached the stage right now where these two great teams have been able to come to the front. They've done so well throughout the entirety of the tournament. So it does make a lot of sense to be able to actually see them in the finals. Of course, China and South Korea did put up a very good fight going into last week's semis. So being able to see both Spain and Italy reach this stage just goes to show and pay dividends of the amount of work they've been able to put in, both with the team players, but also the managing side of things. As you will, if you're not already aware, we will actually be having manager interviews later on during this show. But what I did want to try to cover as well, Ben, is the fact that we saw Italy in last year's Euro Cup finals, which of course was once again hosted by Victory Road. So they're definitely no stranger to the limelight and the final stage. Of course, they were up against Sweden last year, and now rather than Sweden, we do actually actually have Spain, which have been in a phenomenal form throughout the entirety of the tournament. They have not lost even once, from what I last checked.
Not at all, and we'll definitely be getting onto that. So just before we move any further on, we'll just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be going over today. So we have a lot of stats between the players that are playing in the matchups. We've got the managers waiting on standby to talk a little bit about their runs, a little bit about their players, and give a few shout outs, I'm sure. We've also got a little bit of usage stats from all of the tournaments. The guys at Victory Road have done a fantastic job of putting together all of the usage stats for the restricteds, the non-restricteds, Pokemon that have been used just once as well, for a little bit of a good time there. And we're going to be going through all of that, as well as asking the managers a little bit more about their runs as well. So all of that to come. And to top it all off, we've got our casters going to be battling up against each other. So a little bit of fun to close out the stream at the end, once we've got through all of the great things that we've got to talk about throughout this World Cup. So we're going to be going over to the first slide that we have prepared for you today. That's going to be the player stats and what the top players in this tournament have been, coming up on your screen here. Costa, I see a lot of Spain there.
Yeah, there's a lot of Spain, and there's also a bit of a salt of Italy in there as well. You see Flavio, Marco, and William Basolino in the top 10. Of course, as you can see in the graph on the left-hand side, you see the set record, game record, quite impressive records throughout. You can see a couple of them. I think Victor Medina only dropping 2 individual matches and going 7-0 is absolutely phenomenal. But of course, we do have the number 1 starting off, which is Wang Zhuyang of China, with a set record of 8-1, with individual games rocking up to 17-5. And of course, we do have a couple of special mentions on the side there as well.
Yeah, so Leonardo Bononomi, one of the Italian players, had a fantastic set record, undefeated, as well as Eric and Davide, 5-0 and 4-0 respectively, with some really incredible match records. And looking at that, I mean, if you these players obviously won all of their sets. So if you look at their game record there, Leonardo only had two of his matches that went to 3 games. Eric only had 1 of his matches out of 4 that went to 3 games. And Davide only had 3, or had 3 of his 4, should I say, going to 3 games. So it's a really impressive record, especially for Davide being able to go to 3 games in 3 out of 4 of his matches, but still manage to, clinch the win. And I think that's probably speaking quite a lot to the consistency of both the Spanish and Italian players that have absolutely dominated this tournament, and no surprise to see them in the top 10 in such quantity.
Oh, exactly that. And you know that both sides carry so much experience with regards to their players, and also the managers as well. So you've got quite a few international champions. You've got the multi-regional winners as well in the front for them too. So it's without a shadow of a doubt, and of the fact that we are in the stage where they have been able to progress so far and do so well on the way. I do, of course, want to give some special shout outs as well. For Wang, representing of China, China do not have local widespread events in comparison to, let's say, Europe previously, when the circuits are available. So very good to see them, and Wang specifically, Zhu Yang specifically, be able to do so well, even though China unfortunately weren't able to make it all the way to the finals. They did get disqualified, or not, apologies, not disqualified, they got knocked out last week. So it's just a testament to show that once you put in the work and you have your own community backing you and supporting you, as well as having that team spirit, you can go a long way. And that's exactly what Zhu Yang has been able to do. And another shout out to Z of the United States, being able to have that 6-1 record, whilst they were, I believe, knocked out in the top 16, and that was from Spain, if memory serves me right.
Yeah, it's just great to see that, it's not just Spain and Italy dominating the top slots. We've had some cracking players from all over the place. And if you do expand, have a look on the stats section of the Victory Road World Cup website. You'll see, if you expand a little bit further, you'll see some other top quality players that have had great success. And one of the things I really do want to point out, though, that's really exciting, out of those top 10 players, we have 7 of them playing in the matchup tomorrow. So we have Victor Medina, Manuel Barrera, Flavio Del Pidio, Guillermo Castilla, Marco Silva, Ramses Quintana, and William Basolino going to be playing for their respective teams in tomorrow's showdown between these two teams. So not only have we got the top 2 teams of the tournament playing in the finals, we've also got 7 out of the top 10 players of the tournament playing in the top 10, and I don't need to tell you, Costa, how exciting that is and how good the quality of these matches is going to be just based on that alone.
Oh, it definitely will. And I think at some point later on as well, we're going to be covering in the manager's interview where we have the face-to-face and what previous Pokemon all of these trainers had brought in previous weeks following up to this final. So it's going to be very, very exciting, both reviewing what kind of teams they're both brought, but also, most importantly, seeing all the action tomorrow is going to be phenomenal. I think it's going to be, honestly, one of the greatest sets between nation teams in this situation, because they're both so strong. They've done incredibly well, and honestly, for me personally, I've said that they're my 2 favorites throughout the entirety of this tournament, and just being able to see them both in the finals kind of brings the question of which do I think is going to win. And I honestly think it's split down 50-50, because they're both so strong, they have so much experience, they have a lot of talent and a lot of ingenuity when it comes to their team building strategy. So I'm so looking forward to what actually will be featured on our stream tomorrow. I just know it's going to be so hype. So what we are going to be doing though right now, we're just going to go on to our next slide. We're going to be referencing the Pokemon stats that have appeared throughout the tournament up until this stage, as well as highest win rate too. So we're going to go ahead, get that slide up very quickly, and check out a couple of, I'd say, surprising stats, Ben, but I see a couple of Pokemon in the top 2 where they don't bring any surprise at all, to be honest.
No, and to be honest, the thing that shocks me the most is that Incineroar isn't more like 90% usage rather than the 72% getting up to the lofty heights that it is. I find it quite amusing that we see a lot of these top usage Pokemon, but looking at the top 10, you have number 1 with Incineroar having 72% usage, and number 10 with Serena being 14% usage, and just that gap between, well, effectively Incineroar, Rillaboom, and everything else that has been used throughout the whole tournament. But really nice to see, actually, these Pokemon are all sort of fairly consistent in their own right, 50% win ratios, which is nothing to diminish the quality of the Pokemon, because when you play Incineroar and your opponent plays Incineroar, the best win rate that Incineroar can hope to get is 50%.
Well, so, yeah, that's exactly it.
So yeah, good to see that. But I do want to highlight some of the sort of cores that we see. Incineroar Rillaboom being one of the most common cores, usually tied up with Regieleki, Zacian, and Urshifu, and maybe Landorus stuck in there. You can see the sort of almost typical cores that Zacian has been used, and I can see that being a real principal reason why you see all of those Pokemon getting to that level of usage between them. But Incineroar, Rillaboom, Regieleki are just such good Pokemon that they are the glue to so many teams and so many archetypes, and it's no surprise to see them with such high usage stats over the tournament.
Well, exactly that. And I think the kind of common sets that we've seen throughout the tournament and in general with the VGC Series 10 meta at the moment is the fact that you've got the Incineroars going and the Rillaboom actually going for the pivot. They do commonly carry either berries or assault vests as well. I think I have actually seen leftovers Incineroar spring later on in the meta, which is quite interesting because maybe that adds to the fact on if there's enough coverage for that Incineroar to be able to go ahead and completely utilize that HP recovery per turn rather than just have that berry come out. You see that on more of the synergistic Pokemon, like team structures that do accompany it. So having the Rillabooms, they have veered off from those Miracle Seed sets in previous series. Having that Assault Vest, I think, makes a lot of sense. You're able to go ahead and take a lot of damage, maybe even sometimes not guarantee a 2-hit KO from that Calyrex Shadow Rider Life Orb boosted Astral Barrage, which is so vital because you do have that very nice grassy terrain HP recovery to boot and recover that tiny bit enough to give you that cushion of space and threaten it with maybe even a knockoff. So I have seen actually drum beating come into use over time. It's been more frequent as Serena, as we can see, is 10th on the usage stats, did start making more of a show and come out with those Kyogre teams because you want to be able to still have that grass type move, which doesn't get stopped by Serena's Queenly Majesty, which of course does stop all priority moves going towards that Pokemon's team. As drum beating adds that very nice thing that, for example, if there's a switch out and let's say you don't hit that Kyogre in this instance, you can still drop the speed of the Pokemon switching in. So that could really help the positioning for your team and going into the subsequent turn as well, which is really worth noting. And it's such a really cool development. We've seen quite a few other things as well with regards to Rocky Helmet usage prop up too. So it's quite interesting to see how over time the meta has started developing because obviously you've got the staples in the format, so you're just trying to go ahead and make more of a niche themes to cover those checks completely and be creative about it.
Definitely, and I think one of the things that happens most formats where you start off being offensive. You mentioned those sort of Miracle Seed Rillaboom moving to Assault Vest, and early doors people are tending to play a little bit more aggressively. They're trying to get KOs and feel out what does the most damage and how to apply damage well in a format and figure out what sort of coverage you need. And then you find the more sort of bulky Pokemon and the bulky sets that tend to take over to survive all of those hits, and then everyone starts playing Pokemon again, and it gets a little bit where some Pokemon are a little bit offensive, some Pokemon are a little bit defensive, and the format does change around. One of the things I did want to touch on, especially with the stats that we had up on our screen, was the Pokemon that you can use in these sort of team restricted formats where you're only going to be playing one match a week. You're playing against an opponent that you may have a little bit of information against. Maybe you want to try something out. Maybe your team's already won for the week and you think, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to try something out that I haven't tried before and, see how it works in a properly competitive environment. And that's where we go to the Pokemon that have been used at least 5 times. But have the highest win ratio, and it's a completely different setup there to what we had with the Pokemon that have been most used. I really like seeing Regidrago there. I like seeing Sylveon there. A little bit of Alolan Ninetales I do want to shout out because I used that in one of my matches, one of the couple of the weeks, in fact, I think, if memory serves. So that was really good to see. It is one of those sort of tournaments where those sort of team choices or Pokemon choices can be really, really effective. But speaking of Pokemon choices, we're going to be having a look at the choice most important in VGC Series 10. That's going to be which restricted Pokemon do you use. If you're not using a restricted Pokemon, you're probably not going to do quite so well in any particular match. So here are the Pokemon that are going to be the restricteds and what they have, or the usage stats for all of them, but also their face-to-face record.
Yeah, exactly that. So we're going to be starting off, of course, with that Zacian. You got a usage of 29%. Win rate, surprisingly, 50%. Of course, that is a testament. I think the win rate does seem to be quite similar throughout the top 10 of restricted stats. So I think what the main important thing right now would just be to see the usage and how the usage kind of forms and influences the meta. So Zacian being the #1 choice right there, having that access to Intrepid Sword, the moment that it lands on the field, it essentially has that +1 in its attack. It already has a lot of power to boot naturally through its base stats. So just being able to have all of that immense pressure available to you in that immediate turn 1 is so crucial and good, because Zacian as a Pokemon, not only is it insanely powerful and fast, it's actually got a very good typing. That Steel Fairy typing is so good, as it is really good both when, you know, like dealing damage onto Pokemon that even resist Steel type. So let's say, for example, Kyogre. I've seen it do so much damage onto a Kyogre, which of course doesn't have the best physical defense, but it is so good against it, and you can force that damage to not allow that Kyogre to get the full maximum potential of the water spouts out to try to target it down.
No, definitely not. And that's the thing with all of these restricted Pokemon. They all have such a different niche and they all play so well. So you have Zacian, which is, you know, fast and powerful and bulky and, you know, really wants to be a staple of a team. You've got Kyogre that wants to abuse the rain as much as possible and do lots of damage with spread attacks. Tends to be quite good into most restricted Pokemon and needs support with the other Pokemon in a team. So say Rillaboom, it needs a lot of help with. Then you've got Calyrex Shadow Rider that's fast and aggressive, but definitely one of the frailer Pokemon, so you have to really figure out how to keep it on the front foot. You got Xerneas that wants to dig its feet in and go for that Geomancy and get itself to a great board state where it can just launch out those powerful 2+ attacks with that Fairy or a boost. And of course, all of the other Pokemon have their own niches between Trick Room and just being a bit bulky and trying to outplay their opponents. One of the things that I think is really interesting looking at the face-to-face record, though, you see a lot of these are fairly even, you know, low 50s, mid 50s, that sort of thing, percent to mid 40s, until you get to the Kyogre versus Groudon matchup, and Kyogre having the rain advantage and maybe Tornadus bringing the rain as a typical partner to it. But the thing that surprises me most in this tournament is that Kyogre has a nearly 80% win record against Xerneas, which doesn't really make sense to me, because normally it'd be like, oh, I've got a Xerneas and I'm against a Kyogre, so a Geomancy I win, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you'd think, but then, like you mentioned, I think something that is worth noting there is the fact that Tornadus, or that tailwind pressure, if you're able to have that on your side and threaten a potential nullification of fake outs by having that Serena in the back with the Queenly Majesty, you can just threaten so much damage. And even if Xerneas is able to survive, let's say, a Choice Scarfed Kyogre Water Spout, it's not going to be, you know, faring off too well, having more than half of its HP dealt with, and then perhaps you could even have that Rillaboom in the back and try to priority take it out with the Grassy Glide. So even though it just needs to, I think Xerneas needs to have that really good support around it. It doesn't have that immediate spread damage threat like Kyogre does, and I think that's what it seems to be the case right now, as Kyogre has more options when it comes to team partners and in general compositions, with you know, certain new Pokemon also introduced, or should I say new mechanics introduced, because previous to Gen 8, I believe Tailwind or any sort of speed interactions, they weren't instantaneous. They tended to happen the turn after. So having that change as well, I think, can prove to some testament to why Kyogre, in this instance, does have an overwhelmingly increased percentage with a face-to-face record against Xerneas's.
Yeah, I think so. And that immediate pressure is clearly one of the most important things for VGC at the moment with Series 10. We're going to go over now, I think, to the next section that we've got, which I'm really looking forward to, actually, because, you know, we talked a bit about the players, we've talked a little bit about the teams, we've talked a little bit about the Pokemon that have been used and the Pokemon that have won a lot. We're going to now go over to the Pokemon that have won every single time, I believe, if I'm correct here, but have only been used the one time for the one match, and that's a really interesting thing for me, because how many Pokemon did we have? 12,000 and 12,500, something like that.
Yes.
We had Pokemon used, and all of these Pokemon were only used once in that 12,500. So let's go over and see what these Pokemon actually were.
Yeah, let's, as we are going to be seeing Colossal. Oh my lord, you can see with the victory there. I'm not sure if Zacian counts there, to be honest, as Zacian. Oh wait, oh my lord,
no,
I just
it's
realized.
the normal one.
It's the normal Zacian.
Yeah, it's the normal one.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to be starting with Colossal in a non-Dynamax format, which is amazing to see, accompanied by a Kyurem White. So already, I think Sanyo Cha is going to be rocking so much spice in that kind of team. We do see the Zacian, which obviously is that mono-type fairy. It doesn't actually have the steel typing to it to try to accompany it. It does still have Intrepid Sword, so you still do have the +1 in its attack, but unfortunately you do lack that the lack of the Behemoth Blade to start off with, being stabbed as well. It's just such a powerful move, so quite interested to see that. We go ahead and we start off with Corviknight as well, used from Simon in their group match versus China. Corviknight, not a Pokemon that you definitely commonly see at all in this meta, since there are so many threats that kind of push it out, I feel, naturally.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange typing where it's like really good defensively, except if you're playing like most of the specific Pokemon that are used in Series 10, which make it struggle a bit. But I can see why, you know, you'd want to use it with Groudon. I think it has access to Tailwind, if I remember rightly, so a little bit of speed control. If I'm correct, please correct me if I'm wrong. But it's an interesting Pokemon for sure. More interesting than that is Martin using Thievul, which I really quite like as a way to maybe beat Calyrex, opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider. Also has Stakeout, I believe, as an ability, so can pressure the switch in. So you stick it next to the Calyrex. The Calyrex is going for a big Astral Barrage, and if you switch out, maybe you get hit by a double power move from Thievul. So that's quite an interesting one. But moving on to Sahapol, with his Escavalier. It's nice to see the return of Rain Room coming back here, because that used to be really prevalent with a Rain team that had Trick Room either available to it or as part of the main strategy of the team. And it's with its Overcoat ability and the power of its moves, it hits so hard. And not surprising to see it take a victory there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Escavalier just does have a very good typing. That Bug and Steel, and the fact that it is so slow means that it's going to be able to go ahead and threaten even Calyrex Ice Riders as well. So that is quite interesting to see there, as they're not going to be able to deal as much damage back to it. So Glaceon and Latios I find very intriguing as well. Glaceon, of course, it does resist quite a bit of the meta, but I'm quite impressed to see how Lim was able to go ahead about this, as they actually put it onto a Rain team, which makes a lot of sense. You want to be able to try to cover away from that ice typing weakness, but you do have Tornado, so maybe in anticipation of any sort of Landorus's or any other dragon type threats, perhaps.
Potentially, yeah, and certainly Latios does a similar sort of job, maybe getting up some Tailwind action for the Xerneas team to try and counteract the Tornadus Kyogre sort of build. Maybe in all cases, these are Pokemon that were niche picks that really targeted the players that their opponents were going to be bringing. speaking of Pokemon that were used back in the day and not so much these days, Crobat seemed to fall out quite a bit of favor these days with, you know, fast Tailwind, inner focus as well, stopping any fake outs, and pairing it with that Dracovish. Looks like a really good way to put a lot of pressure on really quickly and start launching out Vicious Wrens first, making sure you're getting that double damage. Vikavolt in a Trick Room team makes a lot of sense as well. You've got that you know, Trick Room going up, going to make it faster. It's a really bulky Pokemon as well, able to launch out lots and lots of damage. And speaking of things that launch out quite a lot of damage, Regigigas that's not slowed down by slow start.
My lord, I'm not sure what to think about this set right here, where Christian was able to go ahead and bring the Regigigas versus Ecuador in their qualifier match. So I think in this situation, you do have that Galarian Wheezing there. It will, of course, have access to the neutralizing ability, neutralizing gas, apologies, which does essentially render that slow start nullified in this situation. So it will allow Regigigas to move first. I would have initially thought that maybe Regigigas does have some viability when it comes to any leftovers kind of sets, and maybe even have that wide guard access, which is really nice about it. And I think it's not something that you commonly see or expect from a Regigigas, as of course it doesn't have that Dynamax access as it previously did in former series, where you're just able to go ahead and have those match strikes going. So I'm quite fascinated, and I'm intrigued to see if that match is available, just so I can check it out, because it is so interesting. But then of course it is accompanied with a restricted of that Zamazenta, which I find fascinating as well. That also has access to wide guard, and you can see that Christian has been very creative when it comes to building that team there.
Definitely is. And of course, to round it out with Carl using that Noivern in a sort of fairly standard looking Groudon team, a little bit of support, a little bit of power going on, a little bit of speed control, and Noivern just managing to round out the show and able to get the win for Carl there. So yeah, great to see all of these Pokemon used only once, managing to get a win as well. So rewarding a little bit of creativity in the small sense for these matches, and it's great to be able to showcase that. So there you have it. That's all of the stats that we have for the moment in this tournament thus far. We're going to be just jumping away to a quick break now. We're going to be going to a manager interview. We've got Arash Amati and Guillermo Castilla waiting for us to have a little bit of a chat about the teams that they used, the players that are in their teams, and of course the matchup that we have coming up for you tomorrow. So without further ado, let us take a short break here, and we will be back very soon with Guillermo and Arash.